Happy time of day, guys. Welcome back to Show and Tell. Whoa, nice. How did you know? I'm Jesse Hughes.
And I'm Daniel A. Gilmore.
We're up to Dan's recommendation. This is episode 12. We're talking about Cashback.
2006.
On the Outback. No.
Did I say it was Australian, though?
Yeah, last episode you said it was Australian, and we got about halfway through the movie, and I wasn't really paying attention to the proceedings until someone said, they started talking about money, and they said quid, and I was like, this isn't Australian? I was like, I'm pretty sure this is British, so I had to double check. And then I texted Dan at the end of it and said, all right, here's a picture of the movie I watched. It was British, so did I watch the right movie? So take it away. Year, what was it, 2006?
Yeah, 06.
06. Sean Ellis directed it. I'm encroaching on your decrees.
That's fine. I didn't make any notes. I was like, Jesse will just do that.
You got the trivia?
No.
You don't have any trivia?
I don't have any trivia.
I would have looked up the trivia. Well, guys, that's it. Thanks for listening to Show and Tell. I think I say that every episode. It starts out with Ben's girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, Susie, cursing him out in slow motion. And I thought about trying to figure out what she was saying.
I could make out like half of it.
Well, I started trying to figure it out, but then like certain words would follow words that shouldn't follow those words, and then I just went, it's Australian. I don't, we don't know their lingo, but it was British. But that applies as well to it. Out of all British movies I've seen, this one has the most terms that
like whatcha,
whatcha, and even cashback. I was like, cashback is not a compound word, but in Britain it is. So I couldn't figure out exactly what she was saying, although it pretty much just looked like 19 different versions of the F word.
She said, "How could you do this to me?"
Are you sure it wasn't, how could you effing do this to me?
I'm pretty sure.
The teacup to the head, that was alarming. And
well, yeah, I was like, who throws a mug? And then a lamp.
And then no one references the concussion that he likely had.
Well, that's why he gets his superpowers, clearly.
Well, yeah, exactly. Touche. What's the likelihood of a glass shattering when it hits your head? I feel like it's just going to go thong and hit the ground. That's got to be a pretty solid throw.
Yeah, she threw pretty hard, and I mean, your skull's pretty thick,
And I mean, you do that, and then you collect your thoughts, and you go, I probably shouldn't have thrown a teacup at your head. But then she throws a lamp.
Yeah. Slow motion does no one any favors.
It kind of plays into, though, his psyche and his quote superpower unquote. So it ends up making sense as the movie goes on. I've never understood gross lunches in movies. So he's at school, he's in college, and he puts his tray up, and a lady slops some gruel down on the plate. And my experience in college and high school especially, wasn't like that. Like, we had really good food. It wasn't necessarily healthy food, but it was like really well made. I'm wondering how many people actually have this experience when you watch movies. Napoleon Dynamite comes to mind, where the food is just gross. Was that your experience in high school? Did you eat school food?
It was normal food. It was like burgers and chicken sandwiches.
Well, I mean, same here, but it was good burgers and good chicken sandwiches.
It was okay.
So far the movie's making good points. He talks about his Susie leaving because she thinks that the grass is greener on the other side. So I like how all the dialogue so far, and this is really consistent with basically everything Ben says as a character. It's all very poetic, and it starts, right from the beginning where he's talking about, he kind of ties everything into a parable or a point that you can relate to.
They're in the life drawing class.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, Jesse had a cameo in this movie.
The fart master up there. Amy, my wife, watching the movie with her as usual. He gets up and, does his little fart. Fart joke. And then he farts again, and Amy says, oh, okay. And she's told me this before. She says, once is okay, twice, you're just not holding it in. I wonder which of the classmates incorporated that into their drawing. Maybe some vibrating butt cheeks. Okay, and then you have so he's on the phone, and he's lamenting. And he's in that I got to get her back phase. He's in that stage of just 100% regret, and he's on the phone.
I just said wrong move, Ben. But
calling her up. Oh yeah, absolutely. Always.
But then I was like, kind of a crazy question, because he asks her if they've had sex, and she says yes, and then he says, "Was it better?"
Yeah, I can relate to that. That's exactly what you think of when you're feeling regret for leaving somebody and they're with somebody else. You think about them being physical with that person and wondering if they're better, assuming that they're better. And that's the hardest part of getting over someone at the beginning phases. So I've been in a relationship where I experienced what he was going through, so I could relate to that. And then they get off the phone. And
yeah,
he
I don't
hangs
think you
up.
actually want to know that though. Like for serious,
Oh, of course not. No, I've never. See, that's the
yeah.
thing is I would never ask. That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah, that's part of you wants to know, but part of you would never actually. You would never ask. You don't really want to actually know. You have your own ideas in your head, and you want to know that they're less than what you think they are, but you're not willing to take the risk that they are what or more than you think they are, at least from my perspective. He gets off the phone, and then there's a very cool camera shot. You probably saw this going, oh, Jesse's going to mention this, from going from the hall and then falling into the bed. It was really cool. I like the transitions in this movie. There's like 2 or 3 of them that are kind of similar to that.
Yeah. And then it's him looking through photographs of them.
I like the nice touch of that he's still using the lamp that she threw at his face.
Well, just like there's a label. I don't know if you noticed that. And
Yeah.
it says like blurry, plenty more fish in the sea or something like that.
Yeah, we actually rewound it to catch. Amy was like, no, it's just a label from the Photoshop. And I went, no, I think it said something. And it was all this cool little, basically what he's seeing, because everything he is seeing is her. At this point, the movie has gone from being kind of silly at the beginning to, and this is like 5 minutes, to being really heavy-handed. Like, its music is really epic, and it's clear that the crux of this movie hinges on this relationship falling apart, and it was a really big deal to Ben. What I would have liked to see before jumping into all this was maybe some flashbacks of their relationship, so that we could relate to why he loved her so much. She's attractive. That's pretty much all we have to go by. But there's some cool little, slow motion scenes, but there's not really any chemistry that we get to witness. And this is a constant issue with the movie as a whole with all the characters, and we'll go into that as we go. But that was kind of my initial reaction was, I really like the way this film is edited. I love the writing. I just wish I could see the chemistry between these two characters so that I could relate more to the way that he's feeling.
See, but I don't think they did have chemistry.
Well, perhaps not.
He leaves her, and then later, she says, like, I never gave you a shot.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't think they were together all that long.
That's true.
So I don't think it was something worth showing. And that's the thing, is just, like, you build these things in your head.
Well, I mean, you build them in your head and you give it, a couple weeks, and it might have been a couple weeks for him. It was just drawn out to make it feel like it was as long as he was experiencing it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it just felt like a longer period to me than would make sense for someone who didn't have good chemistry with that person.
Then you think maybe you made a mistake. And like, it was only 2 weeks before he gets to the job.
So yeah, I guess, yeah. So the amount of time it really was more conducive to the amount of time it takes to get over somebody that you didn't have great chemistry with. Somebody that you did, can take years. But then he has insomnia now, and it made me wonder what I would do with 8 extra hours. He's reading books that he always wanted to read, but not only that, he has enough time to reread books that he loves. Like that concept to me as an adult is just totally foreign. Like being able to revisit really a book or a video game. I like to game, and it's hard to revisit a game because they require so much of a time investment in a book. Movies are different. I'll rewatch movies, but not so often as I like to watch new movies. What would you do with 8 extra hours a day?
That was my question too. It was just like, what would you do with that time? I've had insomnia, and I made a note. It was like, mine was like 3+ weeks of not sleeping. Yeah. But at least in my case, is you physically like can't do anything. You're just like a fucking zombie.
Right. Yeah.
And so I mean, yeah, it'd be great if I just was like, oh, I can just sit here and read all night or something. But I'm like, no, I'm just laying here in bed. And then we are introduced to the love interest.
He goes to buy candy, and he doesn't have enough for 3 pieces of candy, so he buys 1. And he still gives her like what would look like to me $3 or $4 of change. And I'm going, that's a lot of change. It seems like you can get all 3 of those. I don't understand British currency, though, so.
1p70.
1p70, please. So we meet her just in that little scene, and then we meet Mr. Jenkins, because Ben sees a poster on the wall that they're hiring at, I can't remember the name of the store, but it's a grocery store. Mr. Jenkins is played by Stuart Goodwin, was the only name I looked up because I just thought he was a really consistent performer as far as acting goes. We jump into the concept of trading time for money, and the way they worded that I thought was really cool. I decided, because I was up these extra 8 hours a day, that I would trade my time for money, and he obviously doesn't need it because he's in school and maybe his room and board is paid for, but he doesn't have a job, and now he has 8 extra hours, so now he's getting a job, trading his time
for cashback.
For cashback. Which is one word, and then Mr. Jenkins reveals himself to be a manager, not a leader, as he walks up to Stewart, and as he walks up to Ben, and I'm looking at this going, this is a good opportunity to try to understand your employee and try to figure out why he's spending so much time looking at the peas. And he just smacks him upside the head and yells at him.
Yeah, just like you can just stand there and like look at her, you're gonna clean it.
Yeah, right.
And he comes back, are you gonna clean it? And then just hits him. Best
bosses, and then that's really it as far as being mean. Other than that, he'll yell at people behind the scenes, but then other than that, he's actually pretty friendly. He's just kind of a lonely guy that wants to hang out with his coworkers, wants to be a friend to them.
And then the clock is the enemy, as we all know in retail or just working.
Other retail jobs I've had, I would tear off the sticky part of a Post-it note and stick it over the clock on the register, because all the registers in the corner would have a clock. And these were jobs where I was generally in the same place for most of my shift. So that I can absolutely relate to. You look at the clock and you're thinking, yeah, it's an hour later. Nope, it's only been 2 minutes. So I can relate to that. The job I have now, I'm all over the place, so I just don't even look at it. And it's really tiny on our screens.
Sausage.
Oh yeah,
just the old lady.
Classic sausage. I was like, hey, it's one of my customers. I'm like, no, man, we don't have sausage at Best Buy. You have to go to Publix down the street. No, they might have some at Staples. Ben has a line, the art of doing something other than what you're supposed to do is addictive. And I like that line. At work, it's true. And then in life in general, it's true. You procrastinate, you do what you want to do. And it was your perception of his time stopping that he was actually doing that or that it was
he imagines it.
Yeah.
But then he has like all these paintings
that he would essentially have made while he was in that state where the world is frozen. I viewed it as this hypothetical, metaphorical thing, and to quantify it in a real world perspective, to understand how he was able to draw people that he would just see in his day-to-day life, passing him by, would be that he has a photographic memory. And this is the film's way of representing that he has a photographic memory. So he can basically take these mental pictures of what's going on in his life, and then he can go home and in his spare time, although he's spending his spare time getting cash back, he would, draw these pictures. That was kind of how I interpreted it throughout the movie. And it was, I stuck to that idea because I like how it applied to all the different situations in which he would freeze time, and the way he would speak about it was that it was like a power, like I'm actually doing this right now. But I always perceived it as being just something to represent that he was able to exist inside his mind whenever he wanted to, basically to not pay attention to the outside world.
Well, like you said, he even says like he imagines it the first time.
Yeah,
but then I said there is sort of evidence that maybe he's not
right. It could go, it could go both ways, which is what I liked about it.
One of the first times when he's doing it, and then he like moves the manager.
Yeah. See, I thought that was like a hypothetical, like here's what I would do if I was really doing this, or this is where my mind is, this is what I want to do. Right before he talks about freezing time, there's the security camera footage where he's standing in the middle of the aisle and people are passing him by quickly. I want to know the origin of the standing time lapse. Was it Garden State? Did Garden State come out before? Every time I see it in a movie, someone will go, "Oh, they stole that from Garden State."
But I mean, like they've done time lapse photos for all types of stuff.
Oh, I know, yeah.
Movies.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, time lapse itself has been, goes way back, and it's awesome. I like that his obsession with the female form never feels sexual. It's just this natural curiosity that he's had since he was a child.
Well, I wish they never showed the Swedish girl's face.
Why?
Just because it was kind of perfect that she was just like breasts out of a vagina.
Well, yeah, because that's what he would have seen. Yeah. That would have made sense from a directorial standpoint. We see like his curiosity through his face, that it's not, he's not trying to steal glances at something that he doesn't get to see every day. He's studying it because he is truly interested in the beauty of the female form. And I like that his, the few flashbacks that we see of his ex-girlfriend are not sexual. It's mostly just her face, and slow motion basically. But there's no, there's a scene where he talks about being with her in bed, but they have already had sex when it shows that scene, and he's talking about the dust in the air as he's enjoying this moment with her. So he's, all the characters in this movie, I feel like they're good characters, but throughout the movie I was going, why don't I feel a connection with all these characters? And it's really because they're very one-dimensional. They don't have they have like one trait. You know, you've got the two thugs in the grocery store. They're likable, but they're one track minded guys. Mr. Jenkins is the same way. Even like his soon to be girlfriend Sophie. Is that right? Sharon. Wow. His soon-to-be girlfriend, Sharon. She's really charming and pretty. But again, just kind of this one-note character, his friend from growing up. But Ben is really the crux of the movie, that really, he has all this volume to him. And basically any time the scene centered around him, which was most of the time, it was very interesting. It was very poetic. And I always enjoyed his character. But it was I found it inconsistent that the other characters didn't receive the kind of love from a writing standpoint, really, that all the other characters did.
He is the narrator, though, too.
True, and that may be his interpretation of those characters. Yeah. Or caricatures. He talks about seeing a vagina for the first time and it not being what he expected, which is exactly what I went through. Vaginas were scary the first time I saw them. You know, he's expecting a round hole that a peg can fit through, and it's really just this... I won't describe it. You know. You have the karate guy. What was his first name? I can't remember. In the credits, it was so-and-so karate. I thought he was pretty funny. He started, you weren't sure if he really knew karate or not, because he started, his first move was to have someone grab his arm and then he slaps him in the face. I mean, that's misdirection. That's karate right there. So I was like, yeah, maybe this guy knows his stuff. He was a very Napoleon Dynamite style character.
So what would you do if you could freeze time, though?
Well, see, I thought about it, and I thought it was cool that he mentions when he freezes time for like the second or third time, he mentions that he ages while everyone else stays frozen. So he mentions, this is during the soccer game, he mentions, or football, he mentions that he's thought about freezing time and then waiting to grow old and die. And so what if this old man took my place, this dead old man, and then everyone else goes on living their lives without me? And my question then was, well, how do you know that you're aging? Like, what have you done to test that? And then later in the movie, you notice that he's waited 2 days in the frozen world and he's grown facial hair. So I'm like, oh, so that's how he knows he's aging. So I feel like if this were to happen to me right now and I knew I was aging when I was freezing time, I probably really wouldn't do it that often. Like, maybe to think about what I was going to say in a certain situation, but you'd have to be, it's a really unique idea that you continue to age. So you have to be really conservative with it, unless you just hate everybody around you. But if I could freeze time and not age, I would do what he did, read books. I'd play video games. I'd watch movies. I'd, get everything done that I want to get done and then begin the day, with everybody else. Do all the things that I do when I'm by myself. That's what I would do if I could freeze time. What would you do?
Maybe try and master something.
Yeah, I would get back into playing guitar. It's really, I love the guitar. On my list of priorities, it's at like the top of the list of things that I don't have time for. And so yeah, that's one thing that I would do if I had extra time was start playing the guitar again. And then it's back to his friend. We'll call him Sean. If we're wrong, we're wrong. And his note as a character is that he is kind of this misogynist and always gets rejected by women because he jumps right into wanting to have sex with them. And so Ben says, I like this girl at work, and Sharon, and she's nice. And he says, nice what? Nice rack. And I know people like that. There are people out there like that, which is sad, that have kind of this meathead mentality of what do you like about her, and then they'll go on to talk about who they are physically. What is it you like about them when you say you like them? It's sad that's what some people jump to. What you got, dude? They're in the locker room at work, and karate chops his stuff into the locker, and Amy and I declared that's how we're going to put stuff in lockers from now on, and in drawers and in cabinets. That's the right way to do it. So then they jump into the soccer game. Now this is the first moment in the movie that was really fruitless to me. It was like a missed opportunity. The movie as a whole is like they had this outline of how they wanted the plot to go based on this character who is artistic, and then they built a plot around it that some of it pertains to what's going on, and some of it makes sense with the plot points that they wanted to make, but some of it is filler, and the soccer game is the first of two significant examples. It's
the only reason the scene is in it is to have him go out with Sharon, essentially.
Well, exactly. That's the whole point of it. But it's like a 10, 15-minute scene, and then then you get to the end, you go, okay, that's why they had this scene. It was a really good opportunity to develop chemistry between the characters, and they never really did. It was silly. There were some funny moments. But all in all, it didn't really lend much to the story, except for the end. I like the... he goes, he frees his time and goes into the hub or the clubhouse, whatever it is, to get a drink. And then there's a character in there that's apparently moving through his frozen world. Mm-hmm. And then they never reference it again. But I think it's cool. I think it's the idea of, in his head, he may not be necessarily 100% safe like he thinks he is, if you interpret the film as being in his head when he's freezing time. And then if he really does have that superpower, then it is just a plot point that they decided not to address again. And then the coffee scene is probably my favorite scene in the movie, where he's sharing coffee with Sharon. And it's the first scene that is really, you get to see two of the main characters develop chemistry. They have a really heartfelt, nuanced conversation. It's a normal conversation. And it makes you understand where their relationship is going to go. It makes you want to see it continue further, and that's the first time the movie really does that, and I thought that was a really cool moment. And then she asks him, they start talking about their dreams and what they want to do, and she asks him what he wants to be, and he says, I want to be a painter. And I'm going, he hasn't painted anything yet. Yeah, he all does. He's just drawing. But he proves himself later on with some really badass paintings.
Well, and then she says the thing about like wanting to meet a painter or date one or whatever it was,
right,
that he had said earlier. He said something along the same lines of while he was sketching, that like somebody would find it attractive.
Oh yeah, right, yeah,
because he would be able to like paint them and see them like seeing everything as beautiful.
Yeah,
that's like exactly what she says.
That's cool. No, that's cool. I didn't catch that tie-in. Very nice. They do their first kiss, and he still sucks at it.
Yeah,
it was like, oh man, you were set to go. Like, she helped you out there, and you just botched it. But that's how he is. That's his character. His line here is, Ben, again, all the lines are Ben. The bad news is that time flies. The good news is that you're the pilot. I like that. And then he gets to right his wrong in the locker room when she goes in to give him his first kiss after he's agreed to be her date to the party and pick her up at 8. And I thought it was a nice touch that he slowed down time, as he knows what's going on in order to enjoy that first kiss. His friends give him a call in the dorm. He's back in his dorm, and his friends call him as this art manager of this gallery who wants to see his work and display it in his gallery. And I thought the story was going to go from here to he's making a decision to go meet up with this supposed art director and skip his date with Sharon, and then they end up, she ends up getting upset with him. And I like that they avoided that cliche, because I kind of thought that's where it's going. Of course, in like 5 to 10 minutes, they jump into another cliche. You know exactly what's going to happen. But I like that they avoided one.
Oh, that classic misunderstanding.
Yeah, exactly. The classic misunderstanding that happens at the party. The party scene is the second scene that's mostly pointless. Susie happens to be there. And so, of course, they have this reconciling that results in Sharon getting upset at him because Susie goes in for a kiss, and Ben denies it, but Susie saw, as Ben says, really cool line, you saw the wrong second of a 2-second moment. Although I liked the scene between Sharon and Mr. Jenkins. That was a really great scene where she kind of
spits the food right
gave him the old
mouth.
Yeah, she gave him the old what for. What did he say? Do you want to go upstairs and have some popcorn and shag? And the way she says no to him is like the best no I've ever heard to a sexual advance. What, you don't like popcorn? Ben and Sharon's relationship at this point is really pretty new, and we're almost to the end of the movie, but we want more of it, and that's the mark of a good chemistry being developed. And really, they only do it with that one scene in the coffee shop and the little glances that they steal in the grocery store. But I thought it was a good relationship and something that I wanted to see more of. And then the obvious scene there is where you know that Sharon is about to witness Susie and Ben kissing. I thought it was cool that he freezes time right away as he turns around. And it's not every day you get to understand the perspective of the person who thinks you've wronged them. And he gets to understand that through his ability to freeze time and see what's going on, or go inside his head and be observant of what's going on around him. And then this is the point where we see that he's growing facial hair as he says, spending 2 days here in order to come up with a way write what he's done, basically. And he says, I can't just explain to her what actually happened. And I went, yeah, you can. If this happened to me, like if I opened the door and an ex-girlfriend kissed me, I would turn to my wife and say, hey, she kissed me and I pushed her away. And my wife would say, cool. But of course, this is a new relationship. So it's understandable that, she would be upset, especially knowing that they broke up much more recently than she broke up with her last significant other. So then he goes to the art gallery to show his work. He goes
to her apartment first.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Oh, and then you have the another slow-mo scene where she gets to curse him out, which is a really cool touch. Yeah. And I tried to explain it, but she wouldn't listen. And then he goes to the art director and shows him his, he says, you had an appointment with me. He said, no, I have no idea who you are. And he says, but while you're here, let me see your stuff. And of course, his stuff is amazing. So he gets to have his exhibit, and then we get to see his actual paintings, and they're just so freaking cool. Like there's one where it's like they're all Sharon, and one of them is half drawn and half painted, and her shirt's like open. Like that was really cool. And then
before they get to the show, she just gets a letter, and then you see that it's the exhibit.
Yeah. And so she
shows up.
She
but
decides.
It's kind of just like, well, why would she show up if she was that pissed? Like, because they don't ever say like how much time had passed in between that.
Well, it's given her time to think and go, well, maybe he was being honest with me, or But that's a good question. Yeah.
So I was kind of wondering about that, and then I was like, and also it's kind of creepy. This is just like at least like 50 paintings or something like that.
Yeah, I know. How do you take that? She takes it the right way, although he wasn't doing it for her necessarily because he didn't know she was coming, but.
Well, he invited her. I think that was the point.
Well, yeah.
You didn't know she was going to show 100%.
Right. And she comes in and he tries to, again, say, hey, I was telling the truth. And she says, this says more to me than you could ever say, which was cool. That she chose not to be creeped out by it. And then he freezes time for both of them, which I interpreted as him bringing down his walls, basically, and letting her into his mind. Yeah, so that he wasn't basically hiding anything from her. Once you meet the person that you love, the right person for you, you basically bring down all your walls and they get to know who you are in ways that no one else knows. And I kind of thought that was the representation of him freezing time for both of them. And then a really cool scene as they go outside and all the snow is frozen in the air and like their silhouettes through the snow, shows that. I thought that was really cool.
Well, and the art director, that was the guy that plays Moriarty in the show.
Yes.
Movies, right?
Yeah, no, as soon as I saw him, I was like, yeah, this is definitely a British movie. He's awesome. Great actor. You didn't have anything else to add?
No, that was about it.
All right.
Like the second half, I kind of was like, I don't really have any notes on this.
Yeah, I didn't write as much during the second half. The beginning was my favorite part as it was mostly centered around Ben and his dialogue. Like I said, it's like it comes straight out of a novel. It's all very well written and very poetic.
3.5.
3. Yeah, close.
It was right there.
Yeah, it was right there.
3 or 3.5.
As far as the movie goes as a whole, there wasn't quite enough of the things that I liked about it, but there wasn't too much of the things that I didn't like about it. So there was, some moments where they were just straight going for laughs and it wasn't funny, but there were only a couple of moments and it didn't really bother me. So little things like that, it didn't crop up too often to make it a movie that I disliked. But it had a lot of potential that it didn't tap, and some that it did. So I did enjoy it. It was good. It was a good watch. So next week we were talking about this movie Amy and I recently saw. It's called The Last 5 Years. It's a more recent musical, and it was a good watch. And it got me thinking about musicals and newer musicals that have come out. So I went through my list. We're gonna watch Once, which is a modern musical that you told me you haven't seen, and your puzzled face shows me that was correct.
Yeah, I don't think
so we're going to watch Once. It's going to be interesting because as far as music goes, you and I talk about music a lot, but where we relate is really punk rock. Like those are the bands that we both know and we were both able to sing the songs for. This musical is all folk. And so I don't know how you feel about folk or
I love
if there's
folk music.
Okay, good. So you're going to like it.
I don't like musicals though.
It's not. It's not. When I call it a modern musical, I mean that in that it's not really a musical. It's like they take this drama and they imbue it with music in such a way that there's enough music there, and the music tells enough of a story that it can be considered a musical, but it doesn't play out like a musical, like a Broadway musical.
You kind of mean like Inside Llewyn Davis or something, then?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of like that. I feel like. Maybe I'm ruining some stuff, but no, it's more like an Inside Llewyn Davis.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think you'll dig it. So that's what we're going to watch. We're watching Once. Thank you guys for listening. This is Show and Tell My name is Jesse Hughes.
And I'm Daniel A. Gilmore. Check us out. Send us some messages.
iTunes. Review us. Facebook. Dislike us? Can you do that yet?
I don't know. I don't know, man.
YouTube. And pretty much any podcast site. See, it's not just iTunes. We're automatically going to pop up on any podcast search engine. So search for Show and Tell. Send a text to your friends. Tell them to listen in. Watch the flicks if you feel like it. If you don't feel like it, it's kind of a cool way to experience a movie in a smaller period of time, or give you an idea of whether or not the movie is for you. So think about it. Of course, if you're hearing me say this, then you did think about it and you listened to the episode. So thank you for that. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Show and Tell.